Good morning from West Bradford Township, Pennsylvania. Got a Scag Freedom Z here, 2015 model I picked up on Craigslist. And love the machine, but sprays grass all over my mulch bed. So found out about the Grassflap. Many of you probably heard of it. First off, let me say I'm an architect, not a mechanic. So I'm sure there's better ways to do everything that I'm attempting here, but I looked at different videos, different installations, and the one thing I couldn't find is a Grassflap attached to the Scag that still allows for the OEM bagger chute to be installed. So I'm going to attempt this today. Hopefully this helps me and maybe someone else as well. All right, here's the Grassflap. I've gone ahead and assembled the basic components. I won't go through that. David Grassflap did a fine job on his website explaining that, so I'm not going to do it any better than he did. But I did mock up the bagger chute, and one thing that Dave pointed out when I talked to him is that this pin is going to be in the way of where the base plate for the Grassflap is going to be. And what he suggested was using two short pins instead of the long pins so that there's no obstruction in the middle. So went to the local big box store and picked up these guys. I wasn't sure how long I was going to need, but this guy's got multiple holes, so I can test fit it into place and see which one of these openings is going to work best, and I can either just slide it in and out or maybe even cut it short if need be. The first thing I notice on this OEM chute is this mounting tab covers the lip on the deck, and it's actually a good bit higher than the factory rib on the deck. So I think what I'm going to need to do is mount this a little bit higher. I'm not sure how high this Grassflap can be mounted and still cover the chute, but I'm going to take a look at it and see what we can do. So it looks like the pins are going to work out pretty good. Looks like I got the right diameter, and I can slide these back and forth. You know, maybe I'd have to use 2 cotter pins to set this into place. I haven't made that determination yet, but I do think I ran into my first issue. So I mentioned before that the chute deck, or rather the chute tab, is higher than this rib. The rib on the deck's about, I'd say it's about 1.5 inches for easy numbers, and we're at about, say, 2.5 5/8. So I'm gonna have to use the spacers here, and the first issue is if I stack up all the spacers I've got, you can see I'm a good bit lower. So that's not gonna work. Anticipating that what I need is the base plate of the flap to float above this tab so that I can open the flap and slide this in and still be able to use the grass catcher without disassembling the Grassflap. That's my goal here, and hopefully we can make this work. So one thing I came up with is to use a block of wood. Now, I know wood isn't the best thing to use. I may replace it down the line with a piece of tube steel, but just to figure this out, I don't want to get into trying to find the right piece of steel and pre-drilling and mounting and doing all that fun stuff until I know this is going to work. So for now, I'm going to rip down that piece of 2x4 there and give it a good coat of plasti dip just to give the wood a little separation from the deck. I may even still use these spacers on top of it or below it, just to give it a little bit of distance from the metal in case there's any moisture trapped. So let's see what we can work out next. So the next step here is I got my blocking mocked up here, and notice that this Grassflap's sitting pretty high, so I wanted to take the next step here and set the actual flap material that attaches to the steel bracket to make sure that I have enough height My concern was that the mounting holes on the grass flap would be higher than the plastic flap itself. But looking at this, I've got it lined up with the bottom of the deck, and little crooked here, but you can see that the top holes are still below the top of the plastic flap. So it looks like we're going to work. The other thing that I wanted to look at is this height, and first thing I'm noticing is the welds on the back of this deck fin are getting in the way of my blocking, and I've got this ripped down pretty thin, so my concern is when I torque these bolts down, it's going to want to slip out the back. So may need to come up with another solution here, but I'm going to run with it for now and see if we can drill holes once and not have to make too many holes in the deck here. Deck's been drilled. Used a 3/8 inch metal bit. Marked the holes. So that block of wood, I cut the wood to be exactly the dimension between the outside edge of these holes, and that just helped me mark them on the deck, because with the fin here, I'm unable to set the plate flat on the deck to cleanly mark the holes. So hopefully these line up. I'm gonna set the blocking in, which I mentioned before is already cut, and half tighten these bolts and see how it holds up. This is looking promising. I've got the plate blocker under the flat bracket, and it's pretty straight. There's a little bit of a bow here, and I think I can tweak these bolts out just a little bit and make some adjustments there. So I think that'll work out nicely. And the whole reason that we pumped this thing up was so that we could get our chute on. So let's see how that works. Slide this out of the way. And looks like the chute slips under there nicely. I'm going to try and do this with one hand here. Not sure how successful I'll be. Sorry for the shakiness. So we'll get one pin in. All right. And if I can find my other pin, there we are. So, with the flap in the up position, I'm able to mount the chute, and it looks like I can cut these pins short if need be, or just put the cotter pin through the outermost hole and leave them in place, and that's on there pretty good. So I need to make a little bit of adjustment on the angle of this. The only concern so far is with it up so high, there's a little bit of twist there. So I'll have to see how that works once the cable is installed and it's under a little bit of tension. Or at least when it's pulled on when the pedal's installed. So we'll tack that next. Wasn't happy how that block was sitting, so took everything apart again, made a couple notches in the bottom here. There's a couple of weld points, you can see them there, just in between the two holes. Also, just took a few minutes to get some Plasti Dip and just paint it out. And sits in there nice and snug. It's not rocking anymore, so this might be a little bit more secure. Gonna bolt it up again, see how tight it gets. 8-inch mount, which Dave recommended at Grassflap, so that it would fit between the factory tabs for the grass catcher. Being that I have it mounted so high, I'm not sure it would have mattered at this point, but everything worked really well. As good as I could have hoped, better in fact. So here we go. Let's give this pedal a hit here. Operates real smooth. And the best part, I'm going to open this flap manually now. And I'll point out first the blocking there between those two 3/8 inch bolts. Notching the bottom out for those fillet welds on the deck rib made a big difference. It's a lot more stable, very secure. Tugging on that shakes the whole deck, so I'm confident that's going to be on there pretty good. So let's put this bagger on. Try this one-handed here. Gave myself about 1/4 inch of play. Otherwise, I could have dropped that blocking down just a little bit. So we'll get this pin on this side. And now the other side. So there we go. Everything fits nice and secure. No issues getting those pins in for the grass catcher. Don't have to do any uninstallation of the grass flap, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Will point out though, the pedal didn't end up in the location I'd wanted. I was hoping to mount it up in this slanted location out of the way of the footwell, but the crossbar here is so close that the cable kinked pretty hard, so I ended up having to unbolt it and relocate it here. Works just as well, just wasn't my first choice. And plenty of room underneath. Cable comes out just here, gentle bend. Got it zip tied up out of the way of the belts and pulleys. Only thing I really have left to do is to curve these corners here. It was out of butane, so I'm gonna have to unbolt this later on and heat it up, and I'm gonna give it a bend to follow the curve of the deck there. But otherwise, there you have it. Any questions, hit me up in the comments. Very pleased that this worked out as well as it did. So if you're wondering, yes, you can install a grass flap with the bagger attachment.